Hello and good afternoon. This is Updates at Noon. I'm Brendan Paul. Making the headlines today. Strong Sumatra quake causes tremors in Malaysia. Russian attack kills at least 137, including civilians. There was a 6.2 magnitude earthquake in the southeast of Padang Sidempuan in the island of Sumatra, Indonesia. Now, this was confirmed by Indonesia's Meteorological, Climatological and Geophysical Agency BKMG just now. Now, the tremors shook several parts of west coast of the Malaysian peninsula, including in Perak, Negeri Sembilan, Malacca, Johor and the Klang Valley. At about 9:41 a.m. today, prompting emergency evacuation of high-rise buildings in the earthquake radius. Witnesses reported seeing their doors and chairs shaking and objects fixed to the walls trembling. According to BKMG, the tremors, with the epicenter at 17 kilometers northeast of Pasaman Barat district and a depth of 10 kilometers, would not bring any threat of tsunami. Now, the COVID-19 Quarantine and Treatment Centre PKRC Malaysia Agro Exposition Park Serdang MIAPS will be reactivated starting today to treat low-risk COVID-19 cases. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said for a start, 100 beds were provided to treat patients in the Klang Valley and the number of beds would be increased as needed. He said the reopening of the PKRC was among the strategies adopted by the Ministry of Health MOH during the Omicron wave, which saw a rise in daily cases.
Dan untuk memberi kita buffer supaya hospital-hospital kita yang sudah mula memberi perkhidmatan dan rawatan bukan COVID, terutamanya kes-kes elektif yang telah pun tertangguh selama 2 tahun, tidak terganggu ataupun tidak terpaksa menghentikan perkhidmatan tersebut dengan peningkatan kes-kes COVID disebabkan gelombang Omicron.
MIAPS integrated PKRC 2.0 was officially closed on 8 February after operating for 14 months to treat a total of 166,072 COVID-19 patients. MIAPS was activated as a PKRC on 16 April 2020 with the intake of COVID-19 patients at the centre only involving non-citizen patients for Category 1 and Category 2 and then closed on 15 July the same year. Meanwhile, the minister revealed that the government already had a suitable date for the reopening of the national borders. According to Khairi, an announcement on the reopening of the country's borders would be made by Prime Minister Dr. Sri Masrabri Yaakob.
The Prime Minister will be announcing the date of the opening of the border. We already have a date. And we will leave it to the Prime Minister to announce.
Previously, the National Recovery Council MPN Chairman Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin reportedly said that the Ministry of Health MOH was preparing and fine-tuning the standard operating procedures SOPs pertaining to the reopening of the country's borders. On another development, Khairi said MOH had received proposals from the Pharmaceutical Services Division to contribute to other countries' COVID-19 vaccines, which would expire after some months if they were not used. On a news portal's claim that Malaysia might have to dump almost 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine, which would expire this May, Khairi reiterated his statement that MOH had never disposed of vaccines as all would be used before the expiry dates. If necessary, he said MOH would contribute vaccines to other countries, like had been made to Bangladesh and Laos. Now, flood mitigation measures and efforts to upgrade river embankments will not only be focused on in flood-prone states, but also in Selangor, which was hit by massive floods at the end of last year. Environment and Water Minister Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man said the country suffered huge losses of up to billions of ringgit every time floods occurred. Therefore, the one-off solutions must be implemented immediately based on the requirements of the respective states. The minister said priority to upgrade embankments will be given to areas that are prone to floods, such as the states on the east coast like Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang and Johor, and even in Selangor, which prior to this has never been hit by major floods.
Dan kita anggarkan bahawa lebih kurang 10 bilion peruntukan untuk kita nak taraf seluruh sistem kita dah. Sebab apa yang berlaku sekarang ialah banjir hampir setiap tahun berlaku dan kita kerugian besar setiap kali banjir, bilion negara rugi. Jadi penyelesaian secara one-off ni kita akan laksanakan.
The minister said this to reporters after visiting the proposed site of the drain upgrading project in Kampung Kubang Parit in Kuala Terengganu. He was commenting on a recent media report which stated that residents living along the coast were at risk of extreme impact from climate change in the next 10 years if mitigation measures, especially efforts to upgrade sea dikes, were not implemented immediately. Meanwhile, on the project in Kampung Kubang Parit, he said a total of 4.5 million ringgit was allocated for works that involve upgrading to a concrete drain spanning about 1 kilometre. The Communications and Multimedia Ministry, KKMM, will set up 618 fibre optic network hubs or points of presence, POP, in Johor this year to increase access to fast-speed internet in rural areas. Its Minister Tan Sri Anwar Musa said out of the figure, 31 POP would be set up in school areas in Kota Tinggi and 13 POP in the Johor Lama State Assembly constituency. He said the POP involves Sekolah Kebangsaan SK Johor Kampung, SK Pancho, SK Dato' Ismail Saadon, SK Muzaffar Shah, and Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Air Tawar, among others. He said it is part of the My Digital initiative to provide fast internet connection in rural areas.
Tapi sekarang ini kita telah mengeluarkan tender yang akan ditutup pada 2 bulan 3 yang akan datang ini, yang akan melibatkan POP fasa 2 yang melibatkan lebih banyak sekolah ataupun point of presence termasuk industri dan sebagainya.
Through the National Digital Network Jendela initiative, he said the 4G internet coverage rate in Kota Tinggi had increased to 96.56% until the fourth quarter of last year, and it is expected to jump to 97.62% by the end of this year. He said under the initiative, a total of 65.29 million ringgit was allocated for the fourth quarter of 2020 until the end of this year for Kota Tinggi. In our foreign segment, US ex-cops guilty of rights violations in Floyd killing. Stay with us. Invading Russian forces pressed deep into Ukraine yesterday as deadly battles reached the outskirts of Kiev, and the West responded with punishing sanctions. Russian missiles and shelling rained down on Ukrainian cities after President Vladimir Putin unleashed a full-scale ground invasion and air assault, forcing civilians to shelter on metro systems, with 100,000 people displaced. President Volodymyr Zelensky said across Ukraine, at least 137 people were killed after the first day of fighting.
За попередніми даними, на жаль, ми втратили за сьогодні вже 137 наших героїв, наших громадян. З них 10 офіцерів. Поранено 316.
He said he has signed a decree on the general mobilization of the population and call up conscripts and reservists nationwide to fight in the wake of Russia's invasion. Ukraine said Russian forces had seized the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, an area still heavily contaminated with radioactive material after a devastating 1986 accident, prompting the International Atomic Energy Agency nuclear watchdog to call for restraint. Russian ground forces move into Ukraine from the north, south and east, forcing many Ukrainians to flee their homes as the sound of bombing reverberated. European Union leaders have agreed to impose new economic sanctions on Russia, joining the United States and Britain in trying to punish President Vladimir Putin and his allies for unleashing a full-scale attack on Ukraine. The EU will freeze Russian assets in the bloc and halt its banks' access to European financial markets as part of what EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell described as the harshest package of sanctions they have ever implemented. The sanctions will also target Russia's energy and transport sectors, among others, and seek to stifle its trade and manufacturing with export control. They will come into effect once legal texts are drawn up and formally approved by member states as envoys and published in the EU's official journal. The EU will also prepare a new aid package for Ukraine and new sanctions against Belarus used by some of the Russian invaders to enter Ukraine. Earlier, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the proposed sanctions package aims to hobble economic growth in Russia, make borrowing more costly, raise inflation, intensify capital outflows, and gradually erode its industrial base. Protesters turn out in cities around the world in solidarity with Ukraine against Russian President Vladimir Putin's attack on the ex-Soviet country, as hundreds of demonstrators who marched in Russia itself were arrested. Russian police have detained more than 1,700 people at anti-war protests across dozens of cities as thousands took to the streets after Putin sent troops to invade Ukraine. As troops advanced, the Kremlin said it was certain that Russians would support the war, but thousands of ordinary Russians defied draconian anti-protest legislation to take to the streets across the country. Several thousand people gathered near Pushkin Square in central Moscow, while up to 1,000 people gathered in the former imperial capital, St. Petersburg. Rallies also took place in dozens of other Russian cities. Over in France, members of the Ukrainian diaspora and sympathetic Parisians staged a demonstration in central Paris to denounce the Russia's invasion. Several thousand demonstrators filled the French capital's Republic Square, chanting, waving Ukrainian flags, and demanding freedom for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Bulgarians and Romanians joined Ukrainians living in both countries to protest Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Protesters marched from Ukraine's embassy in Bucharest to its Russian counterpart while waving blue and yellow Ukrainian flags. Thousands also took part in protests in the capital of Hungary and Poland, joining an international wave of outrage in reaction to Russia's invasion. In Budapest, protest leaders criticized Prime Minister Viktor Orban's friendly ties with Putin, while in Warsaw, protesters gathered outside the Russian embassy and compared the invasion to the 1st of September 1939, the date of Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland, which sparked World War II. A jury found 3 former Minneapolis police officers guilty of violating the civil rights of George Floyd, the African-American man whose May 2020 murder sparked nationwide protests in the United States. Tu Tao, 36, J. Alexander Queng, 28, and Thomas Lane, 38, were convicted after a month-long federal trial in St. Paul, the sister city of Minneapolis, of showing deliberate indifference to Floyd's medical needs. The all-white jury of 8 women and 4 men deliberated for 13 hours over 2 days before finding the 3 former officers guilty of all the charges against them. The maximum sentence is life in prison, but the 3 are not expected to get such a lengthy punishment. Tao and Queng were also found guilty of failing to intervene to stop the use of unreasonable force against Floyd by a 4th officer, Derek Chauvin. Chauvin, who is white and was the senior officer of the scene, kneeled on the neck of a handcuffed Floyd for nearly 10 minutes until he passed out and died. He was convicted of murder last year and is serving 22 years in prison. Floyd's death, which was filmed by a bystander in a video that went viral, sparked months of protests against racial injustice and police brutality in the United States and around the world. But first, on home soil, the Terima Malaya squad now have to overcome the likes of world number 89 Bahrain and Turkmenistan in the 134th ranking to end Malaysia's 42-year wait to qualify for the Asian Cup on merit. In the draw for the third and final round of Asian Cup 2023 qualifiers held virtually at the Asian Football Confederation AFC headquarters in Bukit Jalil, Malaysia, ranked 154th in the world, had been placed in Group E, which also includes Bangladesh in the 186th ranking. Malaysia will have home ground advantage as group hosts, kicking off the campaign at the Bukit Jalil National Stadium against Turkmenistan on 8 June. The Terima Malaya, under the tutelage of new head coach Kim Pan-gon of South Korea, will then face Bahrain on 11 June and Bangladesh 3 days later to hunt for the Asian Cup ticket. Hosts China and the top 12 teams from the second round of the 2022 World Cup, 2023 Asian Cup qualifiers have already booked their spots, including defending champions Qatar, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia and Australia. In the final round qualifiers, 24 nations are set to fight for the remaining 11 spots, with only the winners of 6 groups and 5 best runners-up advancing. Malaysia last qualified for the Asian Cup on merit in the 1980 Kuwait edition, while in 2007 the Terima Malaya squad featured as joint hosts with Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam. Pan-gon and his new coaching team have scheduled the first centralized training camp for the Terima Malaya on 14 March, ahead of 2 Tier 1 international friendly matches against the Philippines on 23rd March and Singapore on 26 March. Both matches will be held in Singapore. Meanwhile, Kim Pan-gon said the maiden clash against Turkmenistan is the most crucial in the final round of Asian Cup 2023 qualifiers to be played in June. Being drawn in Group E, which also comprises 2004 semi-finalists Bahrain and Bangladesh, Pan-gon believes it was not the best opponents he can ask for, but is relieved to avoid much stronger opponents in his bid to end Malaysia's 42-year wait to qualify for the Asian Showdown on merit. The 52-year-old South Korean said his charges to challenge the world number 134 Turkmenistan to secure 3 points and have no reason to drop points against Bangladesh, but the qualifiers commence at the Bukit Jalil National Stadium. Malaysia Cup champions Kuala Lumpur City FC will enjoy home ground advantage in their group outings at the Asian Football Confederation AFC Cup 2022 in June. Now, this is because AFC has confirmed that Kuala Lumpur will be the centralized venue for all Group H matches, which will be played from the 24th to 30th of June. Apart from KL City, Group H will also feature Aiwadi United of Myanmar, PSM Makassar from Indonesia, and Singapore's Tampines Rovers. Another Malaysian team, Kedah Darul Aman FC, will have to travel to Denpasar, Indonesia, to play their Group G matches with Indonesia's Bali United, Kaya FC Iloilo of the Philippines, and a playoff winner involving a team from Cambodia or Laos. Group A matches will be held in Muscat, Oman, where 3-time winners Kuwait SC will battle with Lebanon's Al Ansar, Al Seeb club from Oman, and Jableh of Syria. Meanwhile, KL City FC are set to begin their season with a Super League match against JDT this Saturday. With that, we end today's updates at noon. In our top story, tremors felt in Malaysia after strong Sumatra quake. Tune in to News at 10 coming up at 10 p.m. on my Freeview Saluran Berita RTM channel 123. You can also stream the channel via YouTube or RTM's Click web portal and mobile app. Till then, I'm Brendan Paul. Thank you so much for watching. Have a pleasant day. Take care.